What are some of the things that the Sierra Club noted that might be of concern as far as environmental costs and things like that?
Well, essentially, they're asking for greenhouse gas standards to be lowered, which would, open up and endanger the lives of millions of Floridians because of the damages that greenhouse gases have on the public health. Also, greenhouse gas fuels climate change. And for those of us here in Florida who remember Hurricane Helene, Hurricane Milton, the damage that was done there, greenhouse gases in our environment accelerate climate change, which increases sea level rise, where we're already seeing sunny day flooding in places like Miami Beach. It increases the severity of hurricanes, and it creates basically emissions that affect people's ability to breathe, especially folks who have asthma or folks who have underlying health conditions.
All right, and also mentioned was coal ash. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, coal ash is an extremely toxic substance. It leaches into our groundwater, our drinking water, in places where you have dry ash storage. It blows all over the community. It gets into the soil in places like playgrounds, front yards, etc. Toxic coal ash is, like I said, is among one of the most toxic substances. And the more you burn coal, the more you have toxic coal ash. So really, Duke Energy should be doing more to move away from fossil fuels like coal that have byproducts such as toxic coal ash and methane gas, which has the ability to really accelerate climate change, sea level rise, and other things that damage our environment, that risk human life, and that compromise public health.
All right, and you touched on this a little bit before, but what are some of the risks to Americans if these emissions regulations are rolled back?
I mean, again, it's really it hits people hard who have asthma, who have underlying health conditions. It creates public health issues in the ability to breathe, to have clean air. And again, like climate change is here. A lot of people want to deny it, but the more that you look at the incredible severity of storms, not just hurricanes, but winter storms, rain events, drought conditions, wildfires that we've seen like crazy in California. Burning fossil fuels really fuels all of this. Public health issues, sending people to the hospital more and more because of their inability to breathe, because it's being compromised by greenhouse gas emissions in our air. This is all stuff that could be they could be helped by moving away from fossil fuels. Right now, Duke Energy has been building solar energy, building battery capability. They should be leaning into this moment, especially on the back end of an unprecedented federal investment by the Biden administration into these technologies. So they should be investing in renewable energy that really reduces greenhouse gas emissions. It'll also improve health outcomes and more reliable during extreme weather when those events occur.
All right, and one of the main arguments that these power companies had is that these regulations are too costly. What's your response to that?
Well, it's costly when you're burning fossil fuels, which you shouldn't be doing, because renewable energy technology exists right now. And it's actually cheaper than fossil fuel. If you think about it, renewable energy like solar and wind does not involve fuel cost delivery, like having to ship in or bring in by train coal or having to pipe in gas. It's sunlight that comes down every day. It's wind that occurs almost every single day, especially in certain areas. Those things are cheaper just in the fact that they don't have to deliver fuel. Those don't involve those fuel delivery costs. It's cheaper even more so now because technology has gotten better and more flexible to enable people to invest in renewable energy in ways that really bring down their costs. So if anything, it costs them way more to invest in when they're invested in fossil fuels because of things like fuel cost delivery, but also in the back end because of things like toxic coal ash that they have to work on getting rid of, and greenhouse gas emissions that go into the environment and cost the public. Just by trying to get out of these regulations, Duke Energy is really shifting the costs of those emissions and those byproducts onto the American public so that we have to deal with them without any kind of contribution of reducing that burden from Duke Energy.
All right. And if the Trump administration does follow through on these plans, how does the Sierra Club plan to respond?
Resistance. We are committed to fighting for the Americans' public health and Americans' environment. And if there is a threat to that, either through the lack of regulations through a federal government or directly from utilities, we will stand up for Americans' ability to breathe clean air, have clean water, and to not be victims of climate change that is becoming worse because of poor decisions by companies like Duke.
All right. And if you could speak directly to the EPA administrator right now, what would you say?
I would say I would impress upon him the importance of standing up for Americans. Putting Americans' interests before profits of big corporations like Duke. We are the ones who elect the president. We are the ones who elect our leaders, not corporations. And when they err on the side of doing whatever Duke wants because it makes them more money, even if that puts our healthcare at risk, that's a problem. So our EPA administrator needs to stand up for Americans, our public health, and our future in the face of climate change that is being made worse by companies like Duke, with this letter as an example of how they are doing that.
All right. And Susannah, is there anything else you'd like to add that you feel we didn't cover?
Just the fact that, Duke Energy and other utilities claim to be the best, most innovative companies in the world, and that America is the greatest, strongest, best country in the world. If so, then they can absolutely figure this out and deliver to us clean, renewable energy that improves our health outcomes, our future, and helps to fight climate change.